C3 Works here. Happy to be back. For those that might not have caught me the first time, I'm a co-founder of the Actuator protocol. And if you don't know anything about what that is, I've got a session on Friday, I believe, where we'll be doing it from the beginner's perspective, you know, the what is Actuator. And please join me then. I'd love to explain from ground zero what that is. And I think we have a panel then as well. But this session is about building on HEX. I think that's probably in part because we're a fairly recent project that came and has built on HEX. And so, you know, I'm gonna offer you some perspectives from a co-founder perspective of a team that just did this, try to see if I can't encourage other founders to be thoughtful on things they might do. But I want to begin the session here with a quiz. You ready? So here's the quiz. We're going to see how strong you are at your macroeconomics. So this is a quick macroeconomic lesson for the day. We're going to create intense personal interest. What are the 4 factors of production? No cheating, but I'm going to give you context while you think. If you want to write something down, just make a mental note, that's fine. But the 4 factors of production from a macroeconomic standpoint are what economists for many years have held out, at least conservative economists, have held out as being absolutely vital to the creation and sustaining of any economy. Now think about that for a minute. The creating and sustaining of any economy. Maybe it's just a small settlement in the wilderness. Maybe it's a small city-state somewhere following a vanquished nation. Maybe it's something like a special economic zone that somebody wants to create in a virtualized nation. You see where I'm going with this? The history of the world is replete. Nations need this. And by the way, when tyrants want to destroy a nation, guess what they target? These 4 factors of production. Because if they can take one of these out or more, you lose an economy, you lose a nation. So I think the first starting point here is I want to highlight what these are. And obviously you're going to draw the conclusion that I'm mapping this onto our HEX community, and you would be right. And that's a really important thing to understand, whether you're a founder, whether you're a participant and community member, whoever you are, it's really important to understand. So you've had a few minutes to come up with what you think the 4 factors are without which an economy doesn't function. So I'm going to give them to you here. Number 1, land. You must have land. Now, what is land? Land doesn't always necessarily mean physical land, though in many cases it does. You can't build a factory for manufacturing if you don't have land, right? What would be the equivalent of land in this new world of digital assets and crypto and networks and, you know, all of the things we have? Well, land might mean things like servers and server farms and places to put the server farms and the validators and all of the things that you have to have control of to be able to maintain a network. What would be number 2? These are not in order, by the way. They're just 4 particular things you have to have. Labor. You have to have people to do stuff. And it's not just people to do stuff. It's people with critical skills to do stuff, right? So that's a critical one. A third one is capital. You can have all this other stuff that you want, but if you don't have capital, somebody hasn't produced before that they have money to deploy into something, then it's tough to run an economy. And if they can take that away, it's going to die. And the fourth one, entrepreneurship. Believe it or not, you need to have people with the skills of entrepreneurship. They're willing to take and manage risks. They're willing to coordinate and build. They're willing to lead from the front. They're willing to deploy capital in efficient ways, make adjustments, set vision, clear obstacles, and produce. So those are what the 4 of those are. As you see this, think about our HEX community. Think about the broader PulseChain community for that matter. Think about what Richard Hart has done, and he plainly understands these things. And he set forth a path for us with this HEX protocol, which is far more than just a protocol, and now with the entirety of the PulseChain ecosystem, to enable an economy to form that has all these things, some of which he had to supply in the beginning, in fact, probably most of them. But at this point, we are trying to blossom out as a community. And so one important thing from this macroeconomic lesson here on building on HEX is to know what we're trying to build. Well, whatever we're aiming at in the form of becoming a hexaco, becoming a special economic zone, anywhere you want to go with it, these four are in here. And it's not essential that everybody does all four. That isn't the point. The point is that everybody does something. And we've all got different skills and gifts and things to apply. So with those things in mind, hopefully that gave you a framework to think about how at least our team thinks about building on HEX. Is we're building a community that is actually an economy, and we need to target those things in different ways. So now some more concrete kinds of things. I'm going to go through how our team experienced building on HEX and what we look forward to in sort of four quick topics. The first will be lessons learned. What kinds of things have we learned by developing actuator protocol over the last couple of years, like we have, and what we're seeing at this point? Our number two thing I'll cover will be some objectives and decision points that builders need to have, things that you want to have in mind as you plan your course. Third would be, what are some of the benefits of building on HEX? Well, here's a clue. I just gave you the primary ones. The four factors of production are present. That's a big benefit. You go to other communities, one or more of those are missing, lacking, or inadequate. And then the fourth thing that I'll cover a little bit today from our team's perspective would be ideas for future development. Some things that our team is trying to incubate and kick around, and some things that if we could just inspire others down that path, great, just so that they might occur. So here we go. Let's consider the first topic of some lessons learned. And you can see I've got them there. One is keep and preserve the ethos. The HEX community, and again, by extension to the PulseChain, we really have a phenomenal ethos. It's one that embodies those four factors of production that I mentioned. But we know that it has to be done in the right way. We want trustless systems. We want self-custody, no middlemen. We want audited. We don't want to be fooled by bad code. We want no admin keys. These are things that flow like blood through the veins of those four factors of production that strengthen like sinews would to the muscles and hold all that together. We don't want to sacrifice these dimensions if we want to build a strong and vibrant economy like we are. Second thing I think we learned very early is, look, this is a team sport. So get connected. Whether you're, and we've got some excellent development communities or teams out there. I mean, I won't even start to name them because I'd feel bad that I missed so many of them that are obvious. But we've got some really skilled developers, many of whom are actually in this conference. So get connected if you're a new dev or a dev that's trying to get into this community and do something, and learn about lessons learned and how to go about different things. For the rest, community, I'd encourage the community to speak up, right? We've got developers all over the place, and they're going through this ideation process of what's going to serve the community. Well, everybody listening within the sound of my voice is the community. And you've got to say, you've got something in mind, and maybe an ideation. The ideation comes from you. You might comment to someone you know, and it starts something rolling, and pretty soon innovation unfolds. So get connected, stay connected, and everybody should speak up within the community to people that you know to plant seeds. A third lesson here when you're building on HEX is you need to involve the council of others. I'll tell you, it was a real benefit and a blessing to our team as we did that and connected with folks like Randy Hilarski's group and the No Permissions folks, and everybody there was super valuable and still are in helping us weigh up different things or examine things. There are some counselors that we spoke with within the community about liquidity providing? How do you structure your tokenomics? What are, can we do a proof of concept? What about marketing? We've got some marketing experts, things that could be done. So involve that in the early stages so that you're not just, get a hunch, bet a bunch, and charge down a path that is ill-conceived. I think a fourth thing on lessons learned, which sometimes goes unrecognized, but as we reflected on it, the importance of documentation. Believe it or not, and if you go to, I'd encourage you to go to docs.actuator.finance, you'll see fairly thorough documents. I mean, we've heard that from many sources. They're thorough. Our intent was to make sure not only that you get user knowledge, right? You want primary sources for users to rely on, because we live in a world of deceptions, right? Deceit, deception, phishing, and all the stuff. You need to provide people with primary sources, contract addresses, all the things from places where they're not trusting what somebody typed into some crazy Discord group somewhere. So that was important.
Just to build on that too, I think the two best things I've seen projects do is have one, like the breadth of knowledge, the breadth of like the user, the base of where you can find stuff, the contract addresses, how the functions work, examples, all that stuff. And then also the quick hitting, actuator in 5 minutes, or 30 seconds or less explanation, the elevator pitch, like the stuff. I think for the devs, like one side really deep information for the devs, and the other side a very easy to process for just your average person or crypto person or someone who's not a dev, to just understand it really quickly, so they get interested enough to keep digging in and following the project and stuff. They may never look at the dev docs, but they want to understand the product because it may fix some use case for them. So having those two things is what I've seen is really, really good.
And that's an excellent point. In fact, to tie back to the last thing I just said, was getting the counsel of others. We had others give us that counsel. And so if you were to go to the just plain actuator.finance, you'll see that we have some of those things. We have the 5-minute YouTube clips on specific things. And those came because people pointed out, just like you did, how important they were. And so we end up putting them in there. And that's really important stuff. One last thing there is you get to see some use cases and AI indexing, right? The better your docs with use cases, it makes it concrete and real. And of course, the AI agents can figure out how to put together stuff that is helpful to people because you've provided that input.
Just one on the ethos too. I mean, this is such a HEX focus. This is like before PulseChain with HEX, everything, it was just like, you have to tick the box, or like no one's going to pay attention to it. It's got to be trusted. It's got to be self-custody. Got to be audited. No admin keys. I think after PulseChain, there's been a lot of experimentation, and some better and some worse, with having some sort of admin keys or some sort of centralization, or maybe audits aren't as important, or they're too expensive, or in the age of AI, are they even worth doing, and all that stuff. Now, where is the right balance there? Like, do you think that is there any room for going outside or a spectrum on the ethos, or what do you think is people building on HEX today? Like, what's the right way to do it? And like, what are some of the, not shortcuts, but like, what are some of is there any flexibility there as well to make it easier to build on it, or more enticing or otherwise?
Yeah. And that's a smart question. Again, I'm not trying to be prescriptive here. I'm trying to describe what our experience was and what our aim point would be. I think the reality is there might be room, right? And that comes down to a lot of counselors and a lot of conversation. It may be that there's a need to have some limited key for some limited period of time. I'm not a developer myself, right? I certainly have a team of them, so I'm not speaking from that standpoint, but I can anticipate there could be some reasonable use cases, but I suspect that they're arrived at with great care and an ability to demonstrate relinquishing of those at appropriate times. But if you're going to go that route, you've got an even higher duty to document, be open source, get outside reviews of your code, and do a lot of things. So I wouldn't try to be proscriptive. I would just simply say that's the standard to aim at, and where the cost benefit has some limited spin up condition, hey, we'll leave that to the devs. I'm not one.
Yeah, I think just with the the bear market and all this stuff, I think it's just so easy to start making trade-offs. I mean, people, and of course it's on PulseChain too, and not everything's built on HEX, and there's a billion different ideas of fun and interesting things to build on PulseChain. But I really like this ethos. I like the trustless, self-custody audited, no admin keys, and staying as far on that spectrum as possible, I think is really a good thing. It saves a lot of, mistakes or problems or expectations or otherwise down the line. Like I'm not even a lot of the centralized, there's different projects that go on PulseChain. They're more centralized or less centralized. It's always initially, at least, unless there's a super good reason for this or that. It's for me, I mean, I prefer the DeFi part. It's either a turn off or I'm just not interested, or it's like, man, like this feels like just we're getting away from the ethos because we don't trust that there's gonna be another bull run, or we gotta start playing short-term games because we've been beaten down so much by red candle syndrome and stuff. And I hope we do steer back towards that.
You're right. I mean, the risk is, why are we doing it? What are we sacrificing it for in those cases where we believe it's necessary? Often it's time. We really want to try to catch something. Well, shortcuts aren't great. That's where people get hurt. But I think with enough scrutiny, maybe you get to the right answer, whatever that is. But it's plainly the aim point is where I'm at.
Definitely the North Star. I like that.
Yeah. So there's lessons learned. So a next set of things were some objectives and decisions. What and why do we build on HEX? I'll just make a couple subpoints here. One, I'm of the mind that if you're actually building on HEX, that's a targeting of utility. Grow the city, add to the factors of production somehow. What is it that we're doing to either help the flywheel spin faster, add more value to the projects that are already there so that they're now riding in fourth gear, not first gear on the bike? Do something that's useful there. Doesn't mean that, there's plenty of places for meme coins and things like that, but it's probably in the broader HEX ecosystem, the broader PulseChain ecosystem, but probably not being built on top of HEX itself, because I contend that HEX is developing into a reserve asset for PulseChain, and that reserve asset is best served with utility. And the second point here is, if you're building on HEX, stay HEX centric. Right? Don't try to build your own world and sort of piggyback it on HEX, like some vampire attacks of the community sort of have done in days gone by. Stay HEX centric, shine the light there, and that flywheel that you're amplifying and helping will get stronger because it's already got these factors of production. And the broader PulseChain can do all kinds of other things, but this reserve asset scenario has a very special place.
What are just on that? What is some ways that are examples of just in general ways that building on HEX helps HEX, and then other ways that building on HEX is just kind of like, it's just kind of, you've got, it's just related to HEX. We hope it helps HEX, but it doesn't. There's no direct helping of HEX. Like say HEX with all the actuator, all this stuff. I see those as directly building on to help HEX, to give it some function, provide some utility or otherwise. But like, what is the difference between those and projects that just like they're HEX related? There's some hope it'll help HEX, be generous with good intentions, it'll help HEX, but they're not built on HEX to help HEX.
Well, I would parse it this way. I'm going to save part of that answer. Good questions, Max, for the lower portion of what I'm going to say, because I think some of it I'll speak to down there. But I wouldn't want to try to carve away the people that are intending to help HEX, but they're just somehow off the mark or misguided a little bit. That'll happen. You're not going to get everything right. If that's the aim, is to help HEX, and you're doing the things we've described above, like getting connected, community speaking up, council of others, you're going to get refined into something that actually helps HEX. And you're going to move that direction if that's your true intent. For example, I won't draw us down this rabbit trail too far, but when we first came up with the concept of actuator, it wasn't something that looked like the form it's currently in. We had the same intention, we had the same goals, we had the same desire, but we were going down a path that, looked like there are elements of this that were working, but we ended up having to pull back, make an adjustment, get some counsel, seek some other approaches, and then it became what it is. And quite frankly, if you look at the history of HEX itself, that's how it emerged, right? It didn't come out in final form in the exact manner that it was first conceived, right? There were some iterations there that the community and council came together and refined. So I think the short answer to your question would be, if the intention is right and the openness is there and they're connected with the council of others, it's refinable down the right path. If they're trying to operate in the dark, and people, I mean, there are devs have some tough motives at time, right? That's why you've got scams and phishings and all the stuff you have. Those guys are devs. They just have different motives in mind. Well, that gets exposed if they're operating in the dark versus operating in the light. And I think that's a big deal.
Gotcha.
So next up, what are some benefits to consider? Benefits of building on HEX are, one is you're dealing with one of the most battle-hardened contracts in DeFi. We already know about its audits. I mean, back on day one, we were still wrestling around with, is this thing reliable? What's going on? And we had the 2 security audits and a financial audit and a lot of reason to believe it. But now, my goodness, at this point down the road, with the number of people that have been scoffers and haters and whatever, pounding from every angle they can, I mean, it's like the sewer rat of crypto of, hey, we faced it all and we're going to keep facing it, but this thing has been tried and true, right? So we've got that we're building on across DeFi. And now with things like Liberty Swap and all the other things going on, we're truly ready to open up highways from every other chain out there coming in. And we're going to have some really great reasons like privacy and who knows what other things that we won't talk about that are going to attract very broadly. And we're ready for that. So that is, you're building in an epicenter that has all the right stuff in place. It's got this Lindy effect, which, as you know, means the things that survive tend to survive longer. The longer you survive, the longer you're likely to survive. And so that is a positive flywheel of confidence. And as I've said before, I think that makes this the reserve asset of this whole ecosystem. The time valuation is baked in as a contract immutable. That brings economic stability. Think about that. If you're building your economic future somewhere, you need a reliable, straight ruler that's measuring properly. That's an immutable time valuation measure. And that's what we're getting in the form of HEX and its staking. And that's what we're seeking to create through the actuator protocol in the form of a underlying native HEX yield curve and effectively bond market, but better bond market because it's the perfected collateral. So that's what we think this is going to build, and it's going to provide even more capability. So I got one more here. Did you have any comments on this section here, Max?
I'll get on that one.
All right. And then my last one here, because I see I'm running a little short. Ideas for future development. This is where so much of the rubber hits the road. Some of these are things our team is thinking of, and we would work around. So one thing we'd love to see is that HTTs one day get integrated into lending protocols, maybe ETF-like products like we've got over on the Flux pools, whatever. But HTTs are they're HEX in the future. That's what they are. So we treat HTTs like HEX because they are HEX. They're just HEX on a future day. And that implements this time value of money feature and will prove to be very beneficial. So we want to add things that will help this yield curve blossom and provide sound economic measuring into the future. Next, we're looking at ideas to enable tradable HSI balances. If you've got your HSIs put up in and delegated to the actuator protocol, right now you, of course, can mint your HTTs and do things with that piece. But what about the piece that remains in there? Well, that's serving you very well, but it might come to a point where somebody would like to be able to trade or sell that asset if that they needed even more liquidity for something. So can we use this HEX yield curve to provide sound, transparent pricing about market components? So we're going to examine that and see what other things might be useful there. I think today you have to anticipate multi-chain involvement, cross-chain services. The highways are being built. The reasons for other communities coming are getting very clear. They're going to come. What is it that we can do to anticipate all of the things that people new to the space might want? So we're using those kinds of things to think about. Another thing would be to watch the pipeline. I mean, Max, you just, with that fellow, I forgot his name, that was contemplating getting options built out. That's an example. I took notes on that. Might reach out and try to understand more, because if you can see what's in the pipeline, whether it's at the idea stage or the development stage or the testing stage, that's going to give you an idea of what, as a development team, maybe you can plug into or build upon or things like that. And then the last thing here is, boy, teams, we all need to be watching to find and fill the gaps. Many things that we have today, including actuator, by the way, flow out of experiences in the marketplace that something happened where I wish I could have done that, had that, or seen this. And then suddenly we say, well, if it doesn't exist, let's build it. So be watchful to find and fill the gaps. And every time any of you in the community have an experience somewhere where you're like, wow, I love all that I'm doing here, but gee, couldn't somebody have done this? Well, that's an idea. There's something there it's founded on, and it could become tomorrow's project. So with that, I'll pause and pass it back to you, Max, for final comments and moving on.
Yeah, awesome stuff. I really like. I'm very excited to see people building on HEX. We've seen over the last 2 or 3 years so many people building on HEX during the bear, during not up only. I can only imagine how many devs and how many people are going to attract, and they see the power of HEX and around PulseChain and stuff too. What they're going to want to build and how they're going to see things and different ideas. You talked about, Rodrigo earlier talked about options on the centralized exchanges. Is there a way to do that DeFi wise? All that stuff too. So there is this like supercharged like potential we have that, when, as Richard says, when more people know about you, when they can hear about it, when they see it, it's one of those things, especially if they're interested in the tech, and hopefully we'll get some price performance around that time too. It'll be this, wow, okay, let's build on HEX. Like what don't they have yet? Let's go build it. There's a whole community there that wants it and will appreciate it and will use it. And people come here to make cool stuff. Like I want to see that keep happening.
They do. We have to be a little bit guarded, because when they come, some will come to assimilate, grow, and contribute. Others might come to pillage. So we've got to be a little discerning.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's hopefully we'll over time we'll have the wisdom to know the difference, and we'll attract more good ones than the bad ones. I can only hope.
Exactly.
Definitely, for sure.